Hello everyone, I'm John Evans. Welcome to another episode of One-on-One, where we talk to people who have ties to the Wilmington area and tell their stories to a much wider audience. And this week we're talking to Sheila Boles, a pioneer in women's sports, not just in the Wilmington area, but all across North Carolina. She's had a career full of firsts. She played on the very first women's basketball team at UNC Wilmington, and the next year, she became the first female athlete to get an athletic scholarship from the school. At Hoggard High School, she became the first woman in North Carolina to coach a boys' high school varsity basketball team. And later, she became the first woman in the county to serve as a high school athletic director. She's in several halls of fame. She was named a legend by the Colonial Athletic Association, and she's named a special person by the High School Athletic Association. Hoggard High School recently honored Sheila by dedicating their brand new Sheila E. Boles Gymnasium. That's only happened twice previously in New Hanover County. The gym at Laney High School is named after a famous alum and legendary player, Michael Jordan. The gym at New Hanover High School is named for legendary coach and Hall of Famer Leon Brogdon. Jordan, Brogdon, Boles. That's pretty high rent district right there.
That's pretty high. John, I don't. It's overwhelming, really, when you think about it that way. But the only thing I can contribute it to is I had a lot of great people around me.
Yeah, but it's also the lives that you've touched over 30 plus years in this school system.
Well, I've had some really good kids, young men and young women.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. Hoggard's where I found a home for 20 years, but I had coached at New Hanover, Tyston, Noble, Trask, Laney. It was a long journey to get there.
When you're coaching, when you're doing all this, when you got that first job in Pender County back in 1977, did you ever think, when you looked at the end of a career, what did you hope to accomplish? Was a name on a gymnasium ever in that top five?
Never in the top five. I think when you're going through your career as a teacher, the only thing you're trying to do is to make a difference in some child's life that may not have all the benefits like I had, like my brother had, with two of the greatest parents that any child could ever have. It took me to come to Wilmington to realize that not all children get that.
When did you first realize that?
My first summer in Wilmington, as a sophomore in college at UNCW, I worked for the United Way through the YMCA, and we were located at Lake Forest Junior High School. Oh yeah, I coached and taught at Lake Forest too. And so we would take kids under the age of 12. Supposedly that's what we ended up with 15 and 16-year-olds that were left at home during the day with no parents. So we would take them to the museum and the fire department, take them to a movie. But I remember the first day we took them to Wrightsville Beach. And some of these kids were 12 years old, lived in Wilmington their whole life. And when their eyes saw that ocean, and I realized this is the first time they had ever seen the ocean and lived here all their lives. That was an eye-opener for this Brady Butch girl.
Yeah, and so, and then you all of a sudden have a brand new reason for doing what you're doing.
Absolutely. These kids, I don't know. I read a statistic from Cumberland County about 2 weeks ago in the paper that there are 900 foster kids in Cumberland County. I don't know how many we have here in New Hanover County, but I know that I serve on the Board of Education at Lake Walkamaw for the Boys and Girls Home at their charter school on campus. And New Hanover County has the second largest population at the home. And so, kids go through a lot. They just go through a lot.
You mentioned your parents. What was it like growing up in the household? Your dad was a ball player, wasn't he?
Yeah, yes, he was. He played football at Appalachian State and was played for the Dodgers organization until he back then you could do both at the same time. He was playing in Hickory for the Dodgers and and then he separated his shoulder in football at Appalachian State, and that kind of blew things back then. They didn't have all the great surgeries that we have now. And plus the Korean War got him. He got drafted. But yeah, his sister told me, I didn't know this, he said the first thing I ever did athletically, and I couldn't walk yet, is I could throw a football, according to her.
So did you toss it? Do you remember playing with Dad at all?
Oh yeah, a lot. He would throw with me in the front yard, and he would tell me exactly where that ball was going to hit me, whether I was playing football, because he would hold a football at the other end and throw like a knuckleball with it sometimes, and he would tell me it would hit me right in the knee. He said, "Now you got to catch this right at your knee," and it would of course be coming right at your chest, and at the last minute it would hit you right in the knee. Yeah.
How did you get interested in sports? I mean, you played golf. You played a lot of sports at 70, even before you got to 71st, right?
Well, back then we had no school ball. We didn't have any rec leagues. I mean,
Right.
mainly I learned how to play in the backyard and on at my next door neighbor's driveway. We played baseball and football and basketball, but then I was lucky that I entered the ninth grade about 1968, I guess, and Cumberland County had girls basketball, tennis, and softball, although they dropped softball after 2 years before they brought it back again. So I really only got to play, I played 2 sports in high school, basketball all the way through, and then tennis I only played for 1 year, only because the basketball coach made me play tennis. I'm horrible.
But you enjoyed it so much that you wanted to continue. But back then, like you're saying, there weren't as many opportunities for young ladies who wanted to play sports.
Definitely not, because I came to UNCW as a freshman with 19 hours because I had stayed.
Because you actually went to state first, right?
I had 19 hours from NC State and came down here and was registering for classes. There was a big sign in Hanover Hall that said, if you're interested in women's basketball, show up at this meeting, blah, 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 blah. And so, of course, I did, and we had our first. It was a vote whether we were going to have basketball or volleyball as the first sport at UNCW. And besides, I think they did have tennis. I think that was the only sport they had. But we all voted we wanted basketball. So, of course, that was the first year we had a women's basketball team.
And Title IX had come in.
And 72 had been passed.
So
yes.
your timing couldn't have been any better as far as that was concerned.
My whole life has been like that, John. It was just a matter of being at the right place at the right time with the right people, and that's the way it was. And then the very next year, of course, is when they gave out their first scholarships.
When you're getting those opportunities, Title IX, first program, first scholarship, do you realize at the time how important it is, or after time do you look back and realize how important it was?
I think for me it was a little bit of both. I think we all knew that this was not a glamorous thing, that we were nobody had been recruited and courted to come here, so we knew that this opportunity was special, and that we needed to take full advantage of it and set a good foundation. And I think we did. There was so many, Gwen Honeycutt was on that team, and it was just very, very special. And we knew, I think initially that, I don't know if I thought this at the time, but I really think that they thought this was going to go away in time rather than blossom and grow the way that it has.
Really?
I really, some universities grabbed on and took off with it, and others I think they had a 3-year window there to comply, and some places just waited to the very last minute to comply. And then definitely within 5 years after I graduated, there was no question this was here to stay. And
take me back to the society then. Was the women's basketball program welcomed? Were there crowds watching the game? What was the society on campus and in Wilmington around that program?
Well, we weren't very large. I mean, we were only about 2,600 students at that time, and many of us, there was only one dorm on campus. But there was a lot of people in the community. We weren't packed by any means, but there were a lot of people in the community that never missed a game.
Nice.
It really was. And then there were some guys on campus, Robert Warren, and I can remember several of the guys, Gary Weeks. They never missed a game.
Nice.
The boys, I think the boys basketball team kind of, they were very good to us.
Did they recognize the importance of it?
I don't know if they recognized the importance of it, but they sure didn't shun us or anything like that.
Good.
But I remember, our first uniforms we wore the baseball team's warm-up jackets. I don't know. It was just the hodgepodge. We didn't get our first set of uniforms to the next year.
Really?
Yeah.
That's funny.
And we drove the cars. We didn't have a bus or anything like that. So actually, our coach, Jan Donahue, and a couple of the players we took about 3 station wagons everywhere we went. And we all had to chip in and drive.
So because there wasn't any money for the program, budget-wise, was there?
No, not really. No, there wasn't.
Wow. I imagine setting the foundation for that, though. Again, the importance of what you did back then, did it hit on you at the time?
I don't think so. We were just so grateful for the opportunity to play and go to Raleigh and play Peace, and then go down to Florence and play Francis Marion and get whacked down there. They were strong, and I just think we were just so grateful for this opportunity to be able to play.
Then you get the scholarship. How did that all come about?
I don't know if I can tell you that story, except I remember getting the phone call from my coach saying, I wanted you to know you're the first for me to offer you this scholarship, and it was books and tuition, not board, just books and tuition. But that was phenomenal. I remember calling my dad and telling him. But school was reasonable back then.
Mm-hmm.
It was probably relevant to the time, but it's not like it is now, where parents are having to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to send their kids to school.
And kids are walking out with so much debt.
Yes.
Afterwards, having 4 and 5 and some 10-year plans to pay off college debt.
Exactly. And, I was lucky. I walked out of there with absolute degree and absolutely no debt at all.
So you walk out in 77, and when did you meet Hugh McManus? Because what Hugh has done, I mean, you were the groundbreaker, you were the pioneer, but somebody had to take the chance on you.
That's right.
And it was Hugh McManus, and many times.
Yes, it was. And if you know Hugh, he is not scared to step out of the box.
Right.
And he did, and of course, now there's another thing. When I was with him at Trask for a long time, when he was principal at Trask, but I coached 2 years, coached the women at Laney for 2 years.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then he asked me to come back if I would coach the boys basketball team at Trask and be the athletic director there. And of course, that was just sheer luck, because it was a phenomenal team. Kevin Whitted.
Right.
And Timmy Robinson and Alton Huff. And, it was, a junior high school, 9th grade team that has 14 ducks in one ball game. I remember my dad coming to see me coach that team, and I valued his opinion so much. And I said to Dad after the game, I said, well, what do you think? He goes, I think you better not do too much coaching. It was a talented squad.
Now, that was junior high?
That was junior high, Trask Junior High.
Right.
Yeah. And so then in, I guess, the fall of 88,
right,
Hugh gets the job at Hoggard.
Mm-hmm.
And initially, it wasn't a position for me. And I was happy as a lark. I was coaching the boys at Trask, having a good time. And about the end of September, October, he calls and says he's got a position. And I said, okay, well, what am I going to be doing? And he said, you're going to coach JV boys basketball. And I was like, okay, I'm coming. Because I shouldn't say this, but I really still like the junior high school concept better than middle school, because I think it's just it makes them grow up. It's a better lead in the high school.
Right.
And, I really
many agree with you. Many agree that setting that year aside.
Yes.
Because it's a tough transition going from middle school to high school for a lot of kids. That year aside, when you're not the boss or when you're not lowest on the totem pole, is so good for so many kids.
Yes, absolutely. And then, for a while there, when I first started teaching in the county, we had 7th, 8th grade centers, 9th grade centers, and then you went to senior high school.
Right.
And that's my favorite by far. I just thought socially academically, it was just all a great fit.
And especially back then, I mean, there were some societal problems, but
Yes.
the pressures of today weren't there. But it's still, I think, it was so good for so many kids in that concept.
I think so too, John. I mean,
Yeah.
absolutely. But anyway, going back to Hugh, so I'm coaching JV, and then the fall of '89 rolls around, and Hugh, they have advertised for the men's position at Hoggard, and they first offered the job to Art Pascal, who was at
Newbern,
at
yeah.
Newbern. And we all thought Art was coming. In fact, Art called me. I knew Art from UNCW.
Right.
And he still wanted me to coach his JV team. And we were going to meet. And he called me on a Friday night. We were supposed to meet on a Saturday morning at Jimbo's. And he said, Sheila, I'm not coming. And I was like, okay, fine. We'll just reschedule. He said, no, I'm not coming.
Yeah.
He said, Newbern has just made I said, I just can't leave. So... then it was offered to a guy, James Day, who played at Carolina and won the state championship at Lexington. And then he decided not to come. And I haven't even applied.
Right.
So at that point, Hugh decides he's opening the whole thing up again. And that's when he asked me, because he really thought that, okay, we've caused enough wave, and with you coaching the boys, period, that's enough for the community. They're not ready for you to be the head varsity coach.
Well, tell me about that. Even though it was junior high, how much waves did it cause?
You know, to me, none. I mean, I just didn't. I must have been oblivious to it if there was. But you know, Kevin Whitted's parents, I couldn't have been supported any better. I really could not. So as far as anything obvious to my eyes or my ears, I can't say. You just keep your head down and do your job and
Right.
take care of the kids. And
On the junior high level
that
now,
level.
but the varsity level,
there were a few things that were a little bit different about
Yeah.
coaching the varsity. But, you know, and then obviously, okay, so I get the job.
right? Yeah.
At that point, because of what had happened at Trask, and I had been coaching the boys at Trask, playing these very same kids that now I'm going to be coaching. I think I had a little credibility coming in.
Oh, sure.
Because we were so good at Trask.
Yeah.
And that really helped me because I had a great team. Jimmy Godby and Patrick Boykin and Daryl Stooks and Kent Cox and, you know, just
Yeah.
Eric. I can't even think of all their names, but right now. But they were a great group, and they had been through 4 coaches in 4 years.
Yeah.
Because it was a senior high, you know, they had played.
They just wanted some stability.
So
at this point.
stability, and we went. I think we went 12-12 my first year, and lost 6 games by 1 point.
Wow.
And then we came back the very next year and won 6 games by 1 point and
Right.
went 19-5.
Yeah.
But it was just.
Take me back
Yes.
to that, because I wasn't here in Wilmington when that happened. I didn't get here till '92, so I wasn't here when that happened. So take me back to the headlines, the people in the stands, the things that you had to go through
Well, you know,
in that first year.
I'm sure there were things that well, you know, initially the first thing was I didn't even know that I was going to get the vote from the board because it was a nationwide search. It had to go through board approval, a board
Sure.
vote.
Oh yeah.
And I had a board member who I'm not going to name show up at my office the day of the vote and told me how much he loved me and what a great coach, but he couldn't vote for me to be a men's basketball coach because he didn't think I knew what I was getting into. And so at that point, I thought, I'm not going to get it. It's going to be 4-3 against me.
Mm-hmm.
And then after the board meeting, in fact, I think it was Miss Kavanaugh, but I won't swear to that, read a letter in my personnel file, and somehow Dr. Turpin at the university switched his vote, and I ended up getting it 4-3.
Yeah.
So it was close.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there were doubters because there were boys, and I being a female, but that just never came into play in terms of discipline or anything like that. But I'm sure there were a lot of dads out there wondering about me coaching their sons and stuff like that. There were some headlines in the paper about, and I loved him. Norville Lee at Goldsboro said I would never beat him ever.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And but yet they
and then
treated,
he came back and kind of torched him a couple of times.
We beat him at Goldsboro. I think it was the second year in triple overtime. I'll never forget it. In triple overtime, our center Tracy Michael hit a 3-pointer to win it at the buzzer. But
okay, well, give me that 5 seconds of shaking his hand. Then what was that conversation like?
He was great. He gave me a big old hug, and we were always welcomed at Goldsboro. We just really were. He was just a character. You know?
Oh yeah, and he was. Everybody knew who he was in North Carolina basketball.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
He ended up going to St. Augustine and coaching up there, and but no, we couldn't have been treated any better.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
So they're kind of cool. So after a while, when you do coach and when you're on the sidelines like that, and then you get the AD job, did you know that there was a time that you wanted to kind of step back into more of a managerial role, or was it the cancer diagnosis and everything like that?
I think a lot of it was the cancer diagnosis.
Because you really loved it on the sidelines. You loved being on the court.
I do, and more than that, you don't have those relationships with kids as an athletic director as you do as a coach. You just don't.
Right.
Being a coach is special, and I think that's what I know that's what I miss the most. But at the time, looking back, I felt like cancer had taken a lot out of me. You just get tired physically,
I know.
I know and I thought, well, now's the time. I've been given this opportunity to do something now again that I never thought about. Being an athletic director, except for maybe at Trask, it's not something that I ever worked for or strive to be. But then when it was presented to me, and I did it 1 year. I was that boys basketball coach and AD 1 year, and I just didn't feel like that was probably a good thing for me.
Right.
A lot of people do it, but at the time, my mom was very sick. She had just got re-diagnosed, and
now
so
when cancer knocked on your door, it wasn't foreign because you had family history. Was it tougher to deal with as a patient or as a caregiver?
As a caregiver, much. Watch my mom, that was the toughest thing because she fought it for 12 years. She was first diagnosed at 60, and then during the time I was going through all my treatment, she was re-diagnosed with lung cancer. And in fact, my brother called me. I'll never forget it. I was at Richmond County. We played that night, and he called to tell me. And so she was diagnosed again, this time with lung cancer, and they removed a third of her lung, and she did great. But then, I don't know if I can get the year exactly right.
Yeah.
She would probably about 2000. That same time later on, that she got diagnosed. The breast cancer came back, and this time it was not
metastasized
good.
everywhere.
Yeah, it was in her bones, and she fought it for 5 years with bone cancer.
Didn't your dad have cancer as well?
My brother started this whole thing. He's 8.5 years younger than I am, and at the age of 27, he had testicular cancer.
Okay.
And then my mom, and then my dad had bladder cancer, and then me.
Yeah, it's so, and it's amazing that you said as a caregiver, because as a caregiver, when my wife Sheila was diagnosed, I didn't know if I had the strength to do what was needed to help her get through it.
Right.
How did you find that strength going through it 2 and 3 and 4 times? I just found that you just do what you need to do. What about you?
Yep. I think that's the way you have to do it, and I think somewhere for me in my mind was, you don't ever love to hear that word the first time. And, but once you hear it, once the doctor says, okay, here's what we're going to do, and this is why we're doing it. And then somewhere in your mind, you just got to put, okay, it's in your hands now.
Right.
I'm going to do exactly what you tell me to, but it's in your hands and God's hands now. And with my mom, it's just tougher,
Yeah.
because you don't know what to do to really help. And
I just never thought I could do half the things that I was told we were going to have to do. The emptying of the drains, the all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, I have difficulty when I cut my hand and it bled. I didn't know if I could do that, but you summon the inner strength and you kind of go forward.
Yeah, it's like being a parent when you know that there's certain things you've got to do for that child. Well, there's certain things that have to be done through a cancer journey that and somehow it just takes over.
Yeah. When did you realize it was time for you to retire? And how difficult was that first day after after retirement? Because I don't know what I'm going to be able to do when they take my key card and don't let me in the station again.
John, I was just I think my mom died in 2005. My dad wasn't doing real well with the loss of my mom and his cancer. Well, I shouldn't say his cancer. He fought that well.
Right.
I mean that was it. But I think a lot of it was just the loss of my mom that kind of put him in a tailspin. And being athletic director, it's tough. I don't care if you're teacher, coach, if you pour yourself into it. But this 4A high schools mainly, and I'm not no criticism of 1A and 2A.
Right.
It's just that most of the 4As have many more sports than they do.
Sure.
You got boys and girls swimming, and men's and women's soccer, men and women. It goes. I think there's 22 varsity teams and 13 JV teams, or something like that. So 35 teams going all the time.
Wow.
And basically it's every night and every weekend. And I just ran out of gas.
Yeah.
And knowing that I had already gone through one bout, I just flat out ran out of gas.
Yeah.
And I just felt like it's time.
What was that first day after like?
Well, I cried a lot.
Yeah.
Because I knew that I would miss it. But I just felt like for health purposes, it was a better decision for me.
Yeah.
But I've never really left.
No, I know you haven't. I mean, you're so involved with the Greater Wilmington Sports Hall of Fame and so many of these other organizations that you do. Are you, in some ways, are you busier now than you were as an athletic director?
I'm definitely busy enough to know that I don't know how I worked. But it's not, I don't have to worry about being out there at 10 o'clock every night, turning out the lights, locking up the gates, or, stuff like that.
Yeah. When you're inducted into the Greater Wilmington Sports Hall of Fame, and when you're inducted into the North Carolina High School Athletic Association Hall of Fame, what do you take away from those honors?
Boy, that's a tough question. Your life just goes before, you sit there and relive every year just about when you get an honor like that. Sorry.
No, I
there's a lot of people.
Sure.
A lot of players, parents, my parents, the Hoggard family, any family you're with.
But again, that's high rent district.
Yeah. You don't expect it.
Right.
And you just honored that somebody thought enough of you to nominate you, and then you're selected. And it's...
Is there one of those that means more to you than the others? They're all special. High School Athletic Association, Greater Wilmington Sports Hall of Fame. Of all of those honors, did one surprise you more than others?
Having the gym named after you, because that's a community thing.
Yeah.
That's something that that kids and parents and people you work with thought you did something right.
Who was the best athlete you ever coached?
Wow, that's a toughie. Because I don't think I can pinpoint it.
I was going to say, there's got to be a couple of thousand, but anybody surprise you? I mean, you watched Michael in high school. Did his fame and his growth surprise you at all?
No, he was a hard. I didn't know Michael that well because I kind of got there late in his career, and But I did get to see him play, but I can tell you what I always heard. I mean, he was a competitor, and he worked. You know, as talented as Michael is, and he worked at it too. You know, he just didn't take for granted that God had given him a talent, because he wasn't always 6'6".
Right.
You know, he was a little scrawny thing for a while.
Yeah.
And but he was incredibly driven to get where he got. So he deserves it, because when you combine talent and work ethic at the same time, you got something special.
Did you ever have the opportunity and turn down possibly going and coaching at a college level?
I did. It was actually it was at UNCW as Marilyn Kristoff's assistant. But the pay cut, the pay cut at the time was, I mean, it was like, I can't do this, because I'd been in my career a while. I had a house payment, whole, and it was just like, and you know what? I think I was just meant to be at the high school level. I just think it's great being a high school coach. You know, you got a different aspect when you get to college. You know, it's a business then.
Oh yeah.
At high school, it's not a business. It's not so. I don't think it's supposed to be a business. It's supposed to be helping these kids go through this journey of life and figure out what they are, and learning a few things about being responsible and seeing the big picture with other people involved, and not just about yourself. You know.
You have to put yourself in the back seat at that point in time.
Right, and if you can get a bunch of kids to do that, you got a special thing going on.
High school is becoming a little bit more business-like now, though.
It seems.
Does it bother you as you sit back now and look at it?
It does. It does bother me in a way, because I think kids are missing out on a lot. You know, they're choosing one sport awful early. To play multiple sports is not like it used to be. I know when I was at Trask, we gave trophies to kids that played 3 sports or more.
Yeah.
You know,
or jackets, letter jackets.
You know, it's just, and you miss, and the thing is, it's so valuable in terms of being a competitor. I mean, you know, 3 balls, 2 strikes, 2 outs, you're at the bat, you know, on the free throw line with 3 seconds on the clock, down 1. You can't duplicate that.
Right.
And you're just not put in those situations enough if you play one sport. And I don't know how good it is on young bodies, the repetition of doing that.
And also now they're going to camps as a 9th or a 10th grader because they throw well. They're going to be a quarterback in college, so they're going to a camp as a 9th grader or a 10th grader, or they're honing in on, because they're this size and this weight and this kind of a physical build. They're doing this instead of enjoying these teenage years that they're not going to get back.
They're not going to get them back. That's right. I mean, I was one of those people, and if you look at some of the NFL players and they were multi-sport athletes. You know, they didn't choose to just one. You know,
Yeah.
Some of them were wide receivers in football, and just being a multi-sport athlete is, and learning all the intangible things. I don't think you can duplicate that. I mean, I don't think you get that opportunity back.
What was it like for you in the classroom?
You know, I taught physical education and health.
Right.
And when you're a coach, I think it gives you a little leverage. And so that's always a plus.
It's that class that's fun for kids rather than having...
Yeah, and it's a leverage in terms of discipline, too. I don't know why, but they just view you different. And I think you probably do get to establish a little bit different relationship with them because, like you said, it's fun. You can really talk to them. It's not that, you know, like the poor English teachers and math teachers that are test,
right.
and they gotta stay on task in a timetable, and I didn't have to do that.
Yeah. Did you have to walk the line as a female coaching males, and And the reason I ask it is that in today's social media venue, there are so many different eyes watching. But as a female coaching males, even back then, did you have to walk a line and make sure that you were transparent in telling people what was going on and being open with people as far as how you handled discipline, how you handled being questioned and authoritarian, authority in the locker room?
I don't think I really ever explained myself, but I have got a lot of my mom in me, and my mom was a real strict disciplinarian. And not that, I say that, and then if they're kids with really good manners, they never, no matter what they do, and you get on them, and then they go, "Sorry, Miss Boles, yes, ma'am," whatever. They just take the wind right out of your cell. So right. I'm kind of easy too. They could wrap me right around their finger.
But was there a first test as a coach of even when it was back at Trask, coaching the boys team? Was there a first test that you established discipline and authority that led you on down the line?
I can't remember a specific incident. I mean, yeah. I can tell you one late in my career that I had a young man that I loved dearly, still stay in contact with him, but at Hoggard, but I booted him off the team after a game at Hanover one night because I felt like he had crossed the line. And I told him his mom, and he came in the next day, and we talked, and I love him. I love him to this day. But I told him because he had crossed, he could live with me. I would feed him. I'd do anything for him, but he's not going to play basketball for me anymore because there was a line that had been crossed. And he took that, and he took it like a man. And I'll never forget it. This would have probably been about 1998. Not sure about that, but I think that's about where we are. But the Christmas, my mom died at Thanksgiving. She died on November 22nd, same day that John F. Kennedy died. It's all come in my mind. But it was a tough Thanksgiving and Christmas, and I'll never forget. Just before Christmas, I get a phone call from this young man, and we talk, and he's in the service. He's in the Army, and so I finally say to him, I said, "Where are you?" He said, "Coach, I'm in Afghanistan, and we had 3 phone calls, and I just wanted to call you and tell you Merry Christmas."
Wow. Oh,
yeah.
Boy.
So I'll never forget that. And if I could go back, not because of that phone call, if I could go back, I probably overreacted and probably should not have kicked him off. Probably should have penalized him in some other way.
Right.
Because that was probably pretty darn harsh. And at the same time, I look at what kind of man he is today with children and married and in the service. I don't know. It's incredible.
Boy, you can't put a word or a price on something like that.
No, nothing. So,
man, wow, what a great story that is.
Yeah.
What's your favorite song to play on guitar?
Oh my goodness, that's good. Tighten Up.
Tighten Up. When did you learn to play guitar?
I started when I was about 10.
Really?
Yeah.
I'll never forget the first time that we were at Ashley High School, and it was a talent show, and you and a bunch of the other faculty come out and just ripped on the stage for a while.
Jeff Norris and Dave Spencer. Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
That was a blast that night. Do you enjoy? Was that an outlet for you, music and performing?
I had a great time. I had some great experiences with music. I'm not a musician. I tell people all the time there are 3 passions in my life. Athletics, I got to make a living at it. Music, I'm not talented enough. And working on houses,
really?
being a do-it-yourselfer. Those are my 3 things that I've always loved to do. Because my mom and dad were do-it-yourselfers, so I guess I picked it up there. And my brother can do anything. I don't have that gift, but I love to tinker at it. But I played in two bands in Fayetteville, two little rock bands, starting when I was about 12 years old, and then I played in a Christian group called the Good News Singers of Fayetteville, and we got to go to Canada 3 times.
Nice.
We toured Italy for about
Wow.
3 weeks, and so it just gave me a lot of opportunities to do a lot of things, because there weren't any summer leagues to play sports,
Yeah.
so but the combination of sports and music, just, I don't know, it's always been special to me.
What does being a pioneer mean to you? That's one of those words that it's got its definition, but it's different when you put it in the context of some of the firsts that you've been involved with.
Right.
So in a lot of ways, you are a pioneer. How do you wear that hat, if I can put it in that way?
I think that for me, it's really hard to grasp that I was a pioneer, because there were a lot of women that fought really hard to get Title IX. It was never, I think a lot of times when you have a bill, a law, whatever, like Title IX, it was never meant to do some of the things that it has done in the collegiate level and gender equity and this number of scholarships and that. I don't think it was ever meant to take sports away from any men. But at the same time, those women, they were true pioneers to be able to fight that. So, because I got the benefit from them. Now, the generation, like 5 years later, from when I graduated, really got to reap the benefits of Title IX. But if I'm a pioneer, I think it's only in this county, and more from a coaching aspect than a player aspect. And
you don't think you opened up doors to allow other women to do some of the things that they did by doing it here in New Hanover County?
I've never thought about it that way, but if I did, I'm grateful for it. It's like we're going back to Hugh.
Right.
There's a lot of women in my position that if we got that opportunity, probably from a man that saw something in us that he was pretty confident about, that we were going to make, I will say that we're going to make him look good,
Right. No, but
that's my job.
Yeah, but that would happen from a man giving a recommendation to a man, a woman giving a recommendation to a woman.
That's
it just
right.
happened to be in your instance, it was a man giving a recommendation to a woman.
And giving you that opportunity.
Right.
So if I've done that, and it was when I first started coaching, there were, the young girls sometimes that would say, "This is the coolest thing I've ever seen."
But hey.
So I hope so, because, that goes back to my parents too, that they instilled in my brother, we can be whatever we wanted to be as long as you're willing to work. And in terms of being in the coaching world, especially when I started, don't expect anybody to drive the bus for you, because that's part of your job as a coach. Don't expect anybody to set up at the gym and pull the bleachers out and set up the microphone and wash uniforms. That's part of coaching. Yeah, that's the people see you on Tuesday and Friday night all dressed up, ready to go, but they don't see you in there washing clothes and putting them in the dryer and folding them up and all that stuff. It's not a glamorous job.
No, but for people who love kids like you did, and because you did, I always got the sense that you did what you did for the kids.
There was nobody. I mean, it's for them.
Because there are some people who want to be on the sidelines during a football game. There are some people who want to be on the other side of whatever is happening. And I never got the sense that you did it for that. You did it to help a child.
I hope so. That was my intent, is just to help kids, and when I started, I just never realized how many kids needed help.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I mean, we've known each other because I had 3 kids at Hoggard. You had dealings with all 3 of them. You and my wife have a special bond, not just because your names are Sheila.
That's right.
But because you have a special bond, both breast cancer survivors, both very special people. But it is going to be cool for me to drive down Shipyard Boulevard and to look up there and see Sheila Boles Gymnasium on that building.
Thanks, John.
It's going to be cool for a lot of people.
Well, it's definitely overwhelming. I owe this community so much. From UNCW, their first basketball team, their first volleyball team, the first scholarship, being able to get a job here after my first year of teaching in Pender County.
That's always a good thing.
All the multiple sports, that I got to coach, and then the finale of being able to coach the men's basketball team at Hoggard. I've just been afforded so many opportunities here in Wilmington. From the first day I came across that bridge in 1973, I lived with Reverend Gregory in his house on Forest Hills Drive. I just knew I was supposed to be here.
Yeah, and that's a neat feeling.
Yeah.
When you do that. And put it this way, Wilmington's glad that state only got 19 hours and UNCW got the rest.
I am too. I'm glad I came east.
Yeah, me too. Sheila, I appreciate you taking the time. You're a very special person in this community, and I'm glad you take a time today to kind of sit back and look back at your career with me.
Thanks, John.
Sheila Boles is retired, but she's still very busy. She serves on several boards and committees across North Carolina, including the Greater Wilmington Sports Hall of Fame. She's never very far away from a field or a court where people are competing in sports. That does it for this week's interview. Join us next week when our interview will be Kevin Maurer, the author who wrote the book about the raid that killed Osama bin Laden. He's back with a new book about an FBI agent. Here's a preview.
He was born in Egypt, came over here as an immigrant. After 9/11, he knew he had to help, native speaker, and then slowly but surely ends up getting to the point where he infiltrates this Al-Qaeda plot in Canada that was looking at blowing up a train between Canada and New York, as well as some targets in the United States. And he spends months with these guys and gets to be their financiers, who he's posing as. And I immediately jumped. I mean, it's a story that I've never seen it.
No.
Not to this level. And, he's, like I joke with him, he's Brown James Bond. Like, he infiltrated these guys to the point where they believed he was a Al-Qaeda financier.
More of my conversation with Kevin Maurer next week here on the podcast. If you know someone who has a great story we should tell, send me an email, jevans@wect.com. And please leave a rating or a review. That'll tell me what you think of our product and help us bring in more listeners. I'm John Evans. Thanks for joining us for this episode of One on One.